Hello! I'm terrible at that bit. I'm always terrible at that bit. Hey guys, how you doing? Welcome to the Give You a Whole Yeah podcast. My name is Dom. We have Sam, sexy Sam Smith. That one. There we go. There he is. That way. And we have our special guest, Andy Spores from Rush on Rock. Mate, it's good to have you back. You were with me for SmackDown a couple of weeks ago, deputizing for Sam, and we have you back here to talk about who will buy WWE. Who will WWE sell to? I'm so excited. I spat at the camera. I don't know if you guys caught the globule that hit my screen there. But anyway, we are going to be back right after this message to talk some serious S word. What is going to happen? Who's going to buy it? Is it going to be Disney? Is it going to be NBC? I'm just playing for time because I can never get the intro right. I haven't figured out who I'm going to get in, who I'm going to do it yet. Let's have Dom.
God, I just listened to this whole podcast. It was terrible. I feel like my ears are going to bleed.
What'd you say? This is Darby Allen, and you're listening to Give Me a Whole Yeah podcast.
Yeah, that's the longest intro we've got as well. So I'm always like, when's it ending? When do I kick back in? I'm sitting there doing my moves, and Darby just keeps on going. So thanks, guys. Thank you all for joining me. Thank you for being here. We are going to talk about who is WWE going to sell to, and who is going to make that investment and spend billions of dollars to invest in the biggest wrestling company in the world. So we're going to do this, company by company. We've got a couple of people. We've had a couple of pitches like NBC, Disney. We're going to make cases for all of them. But let's start with our special guest, because you're going to see plenty of Sam tonight as he's hosting Hard to Kill later. And you're going to see plenty of me later on because we're doing SmackDown. So let's have our special guest, Andy, who has made time tonight to come on. You can obviously plug your wares, Rush on Rock, incredible music and wrestling platform as well. But we are here to ask you who you think, and we'll get straight to it. Who do you think is going to make that investment, Andy?
Wow, just straight in there with like the big question. No, not pulling the punches at all.
I've not lubed you up. We're just going straight in.
Dear
No,
God, dear
okay,
God.
Wow. Okay, so I think it's probably, I'm going to say who I would prefer out of it. And I think it's a long-running rumour that Disney's actually been interested in getting hold of WWE in some way, shape or form for their ESPN platform. They wanted the rights to SmackDown. I know they've been on it a few times previously, which I would probably say makes them favourite. And the main reason for that is purely down to the fact that in this day and age, content is king. And anyone who buys WWE, the library that comes with it is absolutely insane. I don't think there's another company out there that could offer quite as much as WWE in terms of a back catalogue. Can you imagine Disney Plus having a section for WWE on it? User friendly, I would be down for that. I think they would look after it. I think there's going to be a lot of money thrown at it from Disney personally, but that's just my opinion. What about you guys?
Man, that is the question, isn't it? Like at Disney, I would prefer as well. I mean, let's start with that as you have led the conversation. Let's start with Disney. I do, for me personally, that is the best option for WWE as well. I'm particularly excited at the potential. Anthony argued with me off stream. Disney doesn't really, WWE and Disney doesn't really mix. They can't do certain things if they're on, if they're on the Disney network or Disney Plus. There's certain restrictions that they might have being, sort of selling to Disney or Disney buying the product. Certainly, that would be my pick, and I would enjoy, the idea. It's more the idea of WWE and Disney, I think, that appeals to me. Obviously, you've just given your reasons there, Andy. Sam, your thoughts on on Disney and whether WB and Disney will connect?
So obviously Disney through Fox, and there's the ESPN angle as well, already have an existing relationship. I think that's a company Vince McMahon, as his position as chairperson, not creative, would have would be able to do business with. Obviously, we know Nick Khan has met with Bob Iger, and he's also met with the guys from ESPN. So it's clear that there's some interest there from Disney, and there has been for a long time. I actually disagree with Ant. I actually think there is adult content on Disney Plus. It has evolved into a platform which is for all users, not just kids. It's not just about Mickey Mouse and Pocahontas. It is, or the Avengers and stuff. It's now becoming a place for all things, all human life, all that sort of content is there. It's not my favorite pick, Disney, but I'd be happy with that. If Disney were to buy WWE, that'd feel like a natural progression for me. I wouldn't have any beef with that decision as a fan or as a reporter. I'd be all right with it. There's some more I prefer, which we'll get into, but I would be relieved that it's not being sold to the Saudi investment fund, which I'll go into reasons why in a little bit. And I would be relieved that it's not being sold to the Khan family, which I'll go into in a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, Sassy says there, I think selling all of it to Peacock and its affiliates will be a smoother transition since the library. We haven't actually listed Peacock on this.
Peacock's NBC. We have, mate. NBC,
Oh, yeah,
Peacock's NBC,
you,
so they're on there. It's late, but yeah, they're on the banners.
Well,
I think
done.
that's true. Also, from a US perspective, they have it on Peacock. But what you've got to also bear in mind is other territories have it on different platforms. So we are still lucky enough to have the original WWE network, but I'm pretty sure, is it Australia or somewhere in the Far East actually has it's on Disney already.
Plus. Yeah, it's Hulu and Disney Plus. Yeah, and Hulu is owned by Disney. So,
yeah. So that kind of argument about the adult kind of entertainment on there, you've got to remember Walking Dead, the final series, is on Disney Plus. Now, I don't think WWE is particularly doing anything that's going to rival that in terms of adult content. They've got that whole Star Plus section, which I think is more of the kind of when they bought Fox out and they had a lot of the content go on there. You know, films like Prey, the Predator kind of film, they're all kind of 18 rated. So I don't think WWE in this day and age is actually too far away from what Disney would be looking for content.
I agree completely.
You've got to remember that whole, it's so many hours. Like that's what people are bidding on. You don't only get the kind of the company that's touring, but you also get that massive back catalogue. And in 2023, the more content you can give people, the more subscribers you're going to get. If you think WWE in the US is probably going to get millions of subscribers onto Disney Plus that might not already have it, it's a gimme for them, really. Same with any of the ones that we'll probably talk about.
Yeah,
I agree completely. Yeah.
No, I could totally, I could totally see what you're saying. Like I say, and you're probably right now. You've kind of talked me around. Disney is the best option for me in this, and obviously, you mentioned there, Andy, as well, and Simon, an argument for that. But we can't do a stream like this without talking about the other options. Now, fascinatingly enough, earlier today it was reported that the Khans are going to be interested, or they are interested at least a little bit. I didn't get the photo here that I've got is not particularly good, but it's a smiley photo of Tony Khan and a smug one of Vince. But we'll use that for now. How realistic? I mean, we've said our case. Disney is the best, the best shout, I think, for a lot of people. But for us certainly. But how realistic or not realistic is AEW? And what are the good things, guys, and the bad things about the Khans making a play for WB, for AEW effectively making a play for WB?
I've got some things to say about this. If you'll
go on, Sam. Go on, mate.
So, for starters, now for this to happen, they've also got to overcome monopoly laws. It might not be a problem, but it also might be as well. That might be an issue for them, a barrier, especially after the Ring of Honor sale as well, taking that off Sinclair. Now, but I think one barrier they've got is actually the funds, because Tony Khan needs to go to his dad and get a much bigger allowance if he's going to go and buy WWE. And then it's the logistics of actually running a behemoth like that alongside AEW. Now, he's proposed today, if I read it correctly on Cultaholic, that he's prepared to, if he had the company, he'd try and merge them and find a role for Vince McMahon. Now, I think all those things would be a disaster. I like the idea of having WWE separate and having AEW, as AEW is the alternative. And I think the two companies help each other do well. The competition breeds more creativity. We've seen both companies get a lot better recently. You know, they dip and they go up again and things like that. But I think if there was only one major player in the marketplace, if the same man owned three of the big four, we would see complacency, and WWE would just become another. We don't want to see WWE just become another Tony Khan product. We have that with AEW. We love it. We're happy with it. Thank you, Tony Khan. But I don't want Tony to just dominate all wrestling. In the same way, I don't want Vince to dominate all wrestling. I don't want any one man or one organization to dominate all wrestling. And where it could work if he protected WWE's integrity and independence and was just an owner from afar. But I don't think he'd do that. I don't think he knows how to do that. And this, to me, where it might not be as catastrophic as I'm saying, I'm really not for it. I also think it's the least likely out of all the options, because Tony Khan is essentially just up against people who've got more money to throw around for the first time in his life. So
yeah, it's interesting, that, isn't it? Yeah, Andy, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think this one's a bit left field, and I think it actually has come around from some of the legalities around it. With WWE being a publicly traded company, there isn't actually a lot, if they did come in and offered a lot of money, that Vince could do to say no, because he'd have to prove that from a business point of view why it wouldn't make sense, because effectively shareholders would be able to veto and say, actually, we can sue you now because you're acting out of your own interests rather than in our interests as something that we have invested in. So it's I believe the term is like fiduciary or something issue that it could become. You heard of the news that broke earlier in the week that one guy in, I can't remember, was it Delaware or someone was suing Vince for something along those lines. Now, he would actually leave himself very open if they came in way over the odds with a bid. And obviously, as we said, it would actually not be it wouldn't be Tony Khan, it would be his dad who would stump up those funds. Again, whether he'd see it as a viable business opportunity, that's up for them to decide. But I think from a personal point of view, WWE, when it had no massive rival, yes, there has been Impact and the likes, but when AEW came around, one of the big things is finally we have some competition. Everything was kind of all organs blazing. NXT was better for it. WWE became better for it. WWE's better for it now. Now, that same argument would be kind of, well, if one person owned it all again, where's the competition? What, you just start resting on your laurels a bit too much.
Exactly.
From a point of view of just look at it logistically, that would mean one company has to run NXT, potentially NXT Europe, Raw, SmackDown, Dynamite, Ring of Honor, and then all of the pay-per-views that are attached to them. It's like, that would be an insane amount of kind of prep work that have to go in. The talent would have to be merged. There's a lot of logistics to overcome there, but it's possible, but only from a legal standpoint. I don't think Vince would want to sell to them out of a pride. Everything that we know about him, he's very much this is my company. I don't think he'd want to sell. If you went back to the days of WCW, there's no way he would have sold it back then to WCW. Not a chance.
Yeah.
And I don't think he would do it now.
Yeah, there is the Ted Turner angle to consider there as well, isn't there? The Warner Discovery angle. I hadn't realised that one, but that's another thing that makes it unlikely. It's the sheer, when you actually listed them all then, Andy, as well, all the different promotions and stuff, the sheer bandwidth like Tony Khan needs to apply to that, even now, is a little bit stretching him a little bit thin. Put the monsters of WWE on top of that. Nah, mate. Like, you are going to have a booker for every brand. That is just not going to work.
And New Japan as well. You'd have to throw them in, and AAA. So,
and when they're on and off relationship, on and off bedfellows with Impact, and all of the smaller satellites like Progress, ICW, Flipping Heck, WXW, it just becomes a logistical nightmare, and it would buckle under the weight. God, I can't think of it. You know, it's my least favorite option, and I'm an AEW fan saying that. But anyway,
it's not my least favorite option because there's another one, and we'll talk about that now. I mean, in fact, let's go through. There's a few others actually that we'll tack on at the end, and I do want to alert you guys to them because it's arguably we're going to talk about Netflix, we're going to talk about Endeavor, we're going to talk about NBC, obviously Peacock, and the validity of that. We've also given our favorites, so I should probably do a poll. Maybe I'll get to a poll in a second while I leave these guys to chat on this. Which one you guys would pick. We've certainly led with Disney. Disney seems to be our pick right now, but there is another valid option, and that is the Saudi investment fund. Now we have to be objective on this, I believe. We are. We are all journalists, but this podcast certainly is not a journalistic platform, and will never be such. So we can be honest and we can be open about our thoughts on this. But I would prefer if we at least started with anything good about this idea, this possibility that the WWE might sell to the Saudi investment fund. I'm going to put a poll up because I'd like to see what the audience, what the community says, the community that are with us. We'll put a poll up and give you some of these options. But while I do that, guys, let's discuss the Saudi investment fund and what is, a perfectly viable option from a business sense, I guess.
Not from any other sense, though.
Not from any other sense, though. Andy, you're the special guest. You start on this one.
So I don't mind kicking this one off on the basis that I'm actually a Newcastle United season ticket holder. So I have some verse in the Saudi PIF. The Public Investment Fund for Saudi Arabia, when they first started sniffing around Newcastle, there was a lot of questions being asked up here. I'm in Newcastle, the football club, and I know obviously wrestling and football doesn't always go together, but bear with me on this one. The club is the heartbeat of the city. Everyone was talking about it. There was a lot of morality questions out there in terms of like what's happened in that country, the kind of ethics and the values and everything, which I'm sure we'll come on to. When it happened, obviously, because of the circumstances of the previous regime for Newcastle, it was not unanimously, but very kind of welcomed with open arms. Now, from a point of view as a Newcastle United fan, I have to admit they have made the club run very effectively in terms of they will put the best people in place. They will make sure the resources are there. They're very good at advertising, etc. So in terms of an actual brand and building that brand, they have done extremely well. However, they can never escape the image that they have about human rights, about LGBTQ rights, which are very important to talk about when you're going into this. What I would say is I don't believe, and I could be wrong on this one, is that the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia does not outright own any Western company. I think they only ever invest because what it's there for is to make the country of Saudi Arabia money away from its resources of oil. I would be very shocked if they would outright own WWE because it would mean they'd have to put so many different logistical things in place in terms of TV deals in the US, which they just wouldn't have any kind of knowledge of unless they hire away. What you'd probably find is if they did buy it or invest in it, it would run as is, but they would put a couple of figureheads on the board, etc., like they have done at Newcastle. I can imagine they would want to keep the vast majority of people there in place. We've heard the stories about the Saudi shows when they were wanting the likes of Yokozuna, who wasn't even here. Their knowledge isn't there. Like, that's just a fact. It's not there. So they would have to rely very heavily on who's there already. And I can see the comment there. I would imagine Vince would have to stay in some sort of control, whether it be creative or otherwise, because they would say, you're Vince McMahon, you're the one who's like put this here, we need you here, etc. So it wouldn't be my worst option because I don't think they get too heavily involved, but the morality around it a big spotlight is going to be shone on that.
Yeah, I agree with every word of that, and Andy. It's for me, like a lot of people. I've seen a lot of fear on Twitter and stuff today with people saying, "Oh, but what about Sami Zayn? What about the women's division?" Well, they can't just come to the West and impose things like that. They can't do that. So rest assured, someone like Sami Zayn won't be fired for being his Syrian ancestry, and the women won't be all wearing bodysuits every week on Raw and SmackDown. Don't worry about that. But there's a bigger issue, and that's the morality side of it that you talked about, Andy. That it really isn't a good look for WWE. That they're already a little bit in bed with the regime, and like the death of Jamal Khashoggi and things like that have really put a spotlight on it. And then there's the human rights abuses in Qatar and other places, and spotlights are shining on some of these places now in ways that they weren't before. And you're right. I think that another big issue is they might leave Vince McMahon back in charge, running things, or maybe Vince and Triple H kind of power share in some form. But I don't think the money is certainly good for the company, certainly good for WWE. I think that money can be found elsewhere. And I don't know if the company wants that bad PR. Like, look what happened when the story was even suggested the other morning. We've got wrestlers ringing around, getting upset and saying they'd quit if it happened and things like that. I think it would be shock and awe if that was to happen. There'd be a lot of disgruntled people, and it wouldn't do them any favors. Like, yeah, they'd get over it. It'd be a storm in a teacup, but while they're up against AEW, who are growing and things like that, it's just not wise. And there were other options, such as NBC, such as Disney, such as Endeavor, who are all very, very viable options, as we will see in a moment.
Yeah. I mean, again, other options. But like Sassy says, Vince would have the most creative control with this option, because he would obviously, they would be private, and like you guys say, that would give Vince the most control. He wouldn't be vetted by anybody. He wouldn't have these investigations. So I can see why, from a business perspective, and that is the key word here, if we're trying to be objective, or at least a little bit objective, that Vince would go for that. And I can see his logic. Ethically, morally, however, it is a different story. But I imagine Vince has at least tried to push for the Saudi investment fund because of that private nature of what would be that agreement. But interesting to see, Andy, and get your experiences as a Newcastle fan as well. And thank you for the insight, because I hadn't really thought about that. You hear, that it hasn't really affected the club and everything, but like you say, there are other options. There are other factors to consider. There are other factors to consider out there.
It is a weird one, that one, though, because it's apples and oranges, I guess, because buying a team in the UK, which, let's face it, as much as I would love it to be the biggest club in the world, it's not. It's, relatively kind of like middle tier, I guess, at the moment. And the idea is to build that brand image. If they were to buy WWE, the spotlight in America, that would be the first time, really, I think people would really go for it, even though Saudi's public investment fund has previously had massive shares in the likes of Twitter and Meta, a lot of I think some of the F1 teams as well. So it's not like they haven't had investments in things across there, but this one seems to be the one that's like, well, not in our country. So I think this is the big one where you'd see the American people or the fans, even if they're not wrestling fans, seem to have kind of like gone in on this one. So there's a lot of public pressure not to sell to this one. So watch that space.
Yeah, exactly. That public pressure is, as you've said there, it is, Andy, paramount. the public pressure there. Yeah, let's go to because you've brought this one up a couple of times, Sam, and I don't really know much about what Endeavour does. Obviously, I know they've got some podcasts and stuff with WWE. Your thoughts on Endeavour and what they bring to the table here?
Well, Endeavour own UFC and have quite a lot of money, and now I don't think they've got as much as NBC, and I don't think they've got as much as Disney. But this is my preferred route, because if these guys could get in there, they might give WWE a little bit more of a sports makeover, like they promised SmackDown was going to be a few years ago. That never materialized. So I kind of like this option. I don't know if they can. I know they've got a lot of money. I don't know if they're the ones offering the highest bid, but I know obviously Nick Khan. This is another group he's spoken to. Now, for me, this is my. I don't think this is the most likely option, but this is my favorite option, because I think these guys would keep Triple H in power. They'd keep things as they were. They'd make it quite sport focused. I'm not saying they'd get rid of the sports entertainment aspects, Bray Wyatt and things like that, but I feel like they'd come at it from a bit of a UFC angle, and they'd try and take it back to basics a little bit. And WWE then might start showing up AEW. So I'm game for this one, because I think their intentions are good. The question is, would they win the bid? Would they win against the likes of NBC, the Saudis, and Disney? Real juggernauts in that space. But this is the one I'm hoping gets it.
Yeah. Okay, Andy, have you got any thoughts on Endeavour?
To be quite honest, it's one of the first times I've heard about it today. I think they've actually had some sort of deals with the WWE network before. I think that might be the kind of like more back end stuff. But I think it'd be a huge coup for them. And it would kind of be one of those, if they're going to go in, this would be the one they're kind of hanging their hat on. I know UFC is very big, but this would give it all sorts of new, shine a light on it. So maybe this is the one that they want as a sort of crown, a jewel in their crown. But other than that, I don't know too much about them. But if they're in that kind of industry, then it's not the end of the world if it was to be Endeavour.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like I say, there's all the potential in the world that it could be Endeavour, and certainly not the worst option here if they went with that. One thing we joked about a little bit earlier, Sam. I didn't know how jokey it was. Was Netflix. Now it was the first time I'd heard of Netflix as a possibility. I haven't really thought about that, as an option, but Netflix and WWE, is that something we could see? I know there's a show coming out with Rey Mysterio. I know they've got some agreements at the moment with WWE, but how realistic is Netflix as a bidder for?
Well, they have expressed a genuine interest. So they have said we'd like it. Now, whether or not they've saying this is how much they'll pay, or only people behind the closed doors know, but they are trying. Netflix is trying to diversify quite a lot. They're trying to get into games. They're trying to get into all sorts of stuff. And WWE would be a massive coup for them. It'd be a massive, get them close to like 1 million subscribers. It'd get it off Peacock, who are a competitor, and it'd give them a little bit of a boost. It'd drag the wrestling fans back to them. They could do a lot of specials. And if Netflix are good at anything, it's specials and documentaries and things like that. They'll see it as a big investment. Like, yes, they'll be paying a lot of money, but they'll be able to do so much content. And I actually think they might be dark horses in this race. They can certainly afford it. They've certainly got the good platform. So I wouldn't count Netflix out, and I certainly don't think they're a joke candidate. I think they're as serious as anybody else in this game. Again, it's not my favorite game. I personally quite like Endeavour to get it, so we could keep the WWE network as it is and things like that, and get everything off Peacock. That'd be great. But I would prefer this option, like the Disney one, like the Endeavour one. I would prefer this to the Saudi option and the AEW option, though, just infinitely.
Yeah. Andy, again, Netflix is a bit of an outsider, but your thoughts on Netflix as an option there?
I mean, Netflix is probably one of the slickest user interface or user experience. So from that perspective, then that would be great. However, what I would say is the headlines surrounding Netflix over the last kind of 6 months or so paint a very different financial picture as to a company that could own or even try and buy WWE, which I think would be the biggest worry is could they actually front that cash at the moment, because they're already kind of scrambling around, cancelling shows, etc. It would be interesting to see if they have that kind of capital free to buy, make such a big purchase. I haven't seen them as someone who could actually kind of swallow that kind of company up before. It's not to say they couldn't. They obviously have the kind of the technology that they would be able to kind of merge that kind of back catalogue and library across. But it would be a bit of a sort of change of pace, I think, for them. I think someone in the comments has actually mentioned that Amazon, maybe they're a viable option. I would say Amazon's probably more viable than Netflix on the basis of their funds. They're always looking to kind of purchase big franchises like Lord of the Rings, etc. So maybe it would play more into there. They have got that live sport element. I'm sure they have like tennis on. They've had Premier League matches on. So they also have that kind of setup already that they could go live. And that's one of the big things is like, you might be able to tell me better, but I don't think I've ever seen Netflix put on any kind of live shows or streams or things.
Just comedy, I believe.
They've done some comedy and maybe some music stuff, but yeah, certainly the comedy is front and center at Netflix. The joke is every comedian has a Netflix special, right? Anthony's going to join us in a few minutes. There we go. That's what a wonderful joy that will be. Andy's not had the pleasure of Anthony yet, and I'm sure that will be lovely. Netflix here in the US is very expensive. Yeah, that obviously needs to be considered. So let's go back over, guys, because I've been sort of listening, intently to your picks. So what we'll do is we'll round up while we're waiting for Anthony, and then we'll conclude.
Have we covered NBC? I don't think
have we covered NBC? There you go, NBC. We can cover them now. NBC and Peacock, right?
Yeah.
So let's change that slightly. Let's do NBC and Peacock, because I actually put it in the poll. That was it. I thought we covered it because I put it in the poll. But by the way, guys, keep voting on that. I want to see what you guys have said. So NBC and Peacock is a option in that poll. Guys, again, let Sam, you take the lead on this one, because it was your pitch before that actually brought these guys to the dance for this conversation.
Yeah, well, I think this might be easily one of the most viable options. Let's be honest. So Comcast own NBC, which owns Peacock, and they have a relationship with WWE going back since the early days of Raw. They also own the USA Network, which Raw is on. So where Disney have Fox, which has SmackDown, these guys have Raw. They have a relationship with WWE. They've known each other. But they've seen WWE at its worst. They've seen it at its best. They know what it's capable of. They know the pitfalls, and they're interested. And they also already host on their streaming service Peacock, as well as the USA Network hosting Raw. So this could be a very, very seamless transition with NBC, and they've certainly got the money as well. They're one of the big boys, and if they want to compete with one of their main rivals, which is Warner Discovery, who have got AEW on there, it would also get WWE probably off Fox and back onto USA. And if they're keen to do that, then this is a great way of doing it. I think these guys could be the front runners. I don't think he's going to get the negative press that he'd get from the Saudis. He wouldn't have the controversy of going to the Khans and the difficulties there. I think it's between these guys and Disney. Now, I personally want it to be Endeavour, just to keep it away from Peacock. But this has been the name everybody has been banding around for years when it comes to buying WWE. It's been these guys and Disney. I kind of think these guys are the front runners. They seem like the logical choice. It's for so many reasons. Okay. What about you, Andy?
Yeah, go on, Andy. Your thoughts on that?
I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think this is, if you're a betting man, this is the smart money. You'd probably get evens at best on NBC Peacock. if you look at it from the point of view, I think you're spot on when you said that it's between these and Disney. When you look at these two companies in terms of could they afford it in the first place? Yes, and yes, the other ones probably could, and the Saudis definitely could. But then you have to boil it back and say, well, who's got the reach to kind of have TV? Who can get the TV Raw and SmackDown and NXT deals on to their air? Disney could do it through ESPN, NBC and Peacock have got that facility. They've already got that relationship with Peacock. They both have platforms that they could put the libraries on already, so the infrastructure's there. But then you look at it and you say, who can get the most out of merchandise deals? Who can produce that kind of thing? Then you still boil it down to those two. So I think it is going to be neck and neck, and it will just be completely down to who offers the most money out of these two more than anything. I agree. I think Peacock would probably be the easier transition. But I think this is where it gets interesting, because really Vince McMahon won't care about it. But if he wanted to get the most eyes on it, then Disney Plus would probably be, or Disney as a company would be the one who gets the most eyes on it, because then you're talking theme park rides and stuff like that potentially in the future.
Well, that was Anthony's argument that does WB work as a theme? I mean, he said, could you make the Undertaker a theme park ride because it wouldn't work with today's generation? But I was like, it would work anyway. It would work anyway. Even if nobody knew who the Undertaker was, it would still be a cool. I mean, obviously,
haunted house with the Undertaker. Absolutely,
yeah, we would know who the Undertaker was, but
they couldn't call it. Sorry, mate. They couldn't call it the last ride, could they? That the implications of that would be a little bit.
Indeed,
of the tombstone.
Yeah, the tombstone. Yeah. So yeah. We'll put the question to the chat. Anthony needs to hurry his ass up if he wants to get on this. We'll put the question to the chat. Who do you guys think it'll be? And I'm going to ask you to duke it out. I'm going to ask you guys to So again, we said Disney in the beginning, but now we've thought about NBC, we've thought about Peacock. You guys have both said there and thereabouts anyway that they are the two front runners. Again, if you're putting these two in a hell in a cell for the rights to WWE, who's coming out on top of that?
I think NBC. I'm going with them.
My head says NBC. My heart says Disney.
Same. My head says NBC. I guess it's better the devil NBC, Peacock. They've worked with many times. Disney less so. So I would say, we're probably looking at NBC, Peacock. If we were in charge of who is getting who is taking those rights for WWE. I think NBC, Peacock, but Disney would be lovely. I wonder if the investigation of Vince would be an issue for Disney. I imagine, that's an interesting point, Sassy. Again, you got to think about the values, but then Disney. I mean, Walt Disney was a bit of a dick, wasn't he? I mean, this is a wider conversation, but they
like to pretend that didn't happen.
Oh yeah, they've spent decades and decades and decades brushing that under the carpet, I suppose. So maybe that's, maybe they're good at that. Maybe they would take the deal and brush that under the carpet. But I like to think that Disney these days, and obviously, Disney have certainly done a very good job promoting a family-friendly environment for, way beyond that has gone way beyond what it originally was under Walt Disney. So actually, and you can't really judge a company that has been operating for many years on the actions of one person, however successful or however unethical they were. That's my opinion anyway. But I would say, maybe maybe that is the argument that Disney could actually do this and still maintain a very positive global.
The timing as well for Disney. They've just recently rehired Bob Iger as the head of the company and took over from Bob Chapek, who really didn't have a good public image. Now Bob Iger, he's the guy who brought Disney Plus around in the first place, and he's also the guy who purchased Fox, opened a lot of the kind of like newer theme parks for Disney. He's a guy who's not scared to kind of make his mark, and that's a kind of big thing, isn't it? So it'd be very interesting to see if this is one of the kind of like more another feather in his cap for when he eventually does leave and hands it over to a successor? Does he bring a whole new audience into Disney and WWE in one go? I think it's the kind of ambitious play that he would make, and it's a statement by them. So this one's a really difficult one to call in terms of like where it could go. But I think out of those two, there's the best in the fans' best interests for those two.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I agree. We have been welcomed. Well, we have not been welcomed. We've been graced with the presence of Anthony. How are you doing, mate?
You've been welcomed by the grace of Anthony. That was the worst introduction I've ever heard. Let me give myself a proper introduction, please,
Jesus
Tom.
Christ.
Your two-time Gimme a Whole Year champion, the humble,
go.
the natural, the greatest champion to ever have lived. It's
Such a dick.
Next time, if you can give me a proper introduction, please.
Right. Well, we've been talking, as you've probably seen, we've been talking for the last 40 minutes on different options for WWE. I assume you've only come here to swing your dick around and give your opinion. So
that's 3 D words in the last minute. YouTube are going to be shouting at us.
Yeah, they are. It's fine. It's okay. So you've listened, I would assume, if you've done your research.
Go on.
You've listened to Anthony. You've listened to Andy's viewpoints.
I've been at work, so I've listened to parts of it, but I've been just finished.
Well, that's fair. That's fair enough. Okay. Well, you've listened to parts of Sam's viewpoint and parts of Andy's viewpoint.
Yeah, man. I listened to who you've all got. You've got so 2 of you had Disney, is that right?
That's right.
And 1 of you had NBC, was it?
Yes. The NBC Peacock. Those are the front runners, yes, but we've also discussed the Saudi Investment Fund, the Cannes LAW, the possibility of an Endeavour as well, which is obviously has a long-standing relationship with podcasts and WWE, and also an outsider in Netflix. So Amazon's also been bought up by Sassy. So go on then, mate. Let's see what you got.
So firstly, I'm not drunk. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Lovely to see you all. Yeah, I was plugging this on Wednesday because I didn't want to talk about it on the AEW stream because it's an AEW stream and we don't need to talk about WWE selling and the darkness that is the WWE company. I think it's going to the Saudis. Part of the reason this rumor thing swelled up on, was it Tuesday night after NXT, was because it was so believable. And the reason it's so believable is because of multiple things that had happened. First of all, Vince had come back earlier this week. Steph had stepped down as CEO. The Saudis are not buying WWE with a CEO as a woman, because that's not the Saudi way. Saudi are currently in a deal with WWE, spending billions on what is 2 events a year. In the Crown Jewel, and what else do they have? Do they do a special every so often? Greatest Royal Rumble and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's 2 a year, isn't it? And they're spending billions on that at the minute. And so they're already spending that money that they can just put into the company and own the company. I also think it'll go. Any of the sort of other investors that you've talked about, Disney, Peacock, all of them, are going to want to be looking at profits and a return on their investment. Saudi at the minute are sports washing. What they want to do is own sports companies, and it makes the Western world go, oh, Saudi's not that bad after all, and completely ignores the human rights issues that they've had. Ultimately, a lot of people are saying that they're not going to watch WWE if Saudi own the company. However, these people are still watching Crown Jewel and still watching the Saudi pay-per-views. And big storyline things have happened at them. Was that Bray Wyatt and Goldberg? Was that at Crown Jewel or something?
That was at Crown Jewel, yes.
Can we not think about that? I had therapy to get rid of that.
So a big moment. So people are watching it already. So I think the people that are saying they'll completely sack off the product is kind of a little bit hypocritical, because they are already watching this product that's run by the Sounders, and we all know about the difficulties that they're having with human rights. So I think that's why it'll go to Saudi Arabia. Then after that, you are looking at trying to get TV deals, and that'll be dependent on whether Fox wants to pick it up. Sassy mentioned earlier about the golf promotion which Saudi Arabia bought, and they spent a lot of money on that and brought in a lot of big stars from the golfing world. And golfing is a huge sport. It is an absolutely huge sport. And they couldn't get a TV deal in the US. No TV station wanted to touch them, partly because there's other, such as the PGA and stuff that already exists. But they wanted to, they couldn't get that deal going. So I think it will go to the Saudis, and then I think that they will try and license it out to someone. If I was to put a bet on it, I'd say Amazon, based on the fact that they have global reach, about a similar number, just a bit less than Netflix subscriber rate. And Amazon's already gone into the live sports entertainment league. They've got several soccer matches, I believe, on it. They've got other. Sorry, I haven't done my research in terms of what they've got. They've got.
Sorry to interrupt you, Ant. They haven't expressed an interest yet. It might be only a matter of time until they do. I just wanted to quickly interject.
Amazon haven't expressed an interest.
Yeah, no. Over to you. Sorry, mate.
It surprised me because they've got tennis on there and they've got other things on there as well. So we'll have to see where that goes. But that's kind of my long and short of it. I think it is going to Saudi, and I think that the reason them rumors took off is because there's a huge amount of believability in it. They'll pay. Ultimately, this is all about money, right? And they will pay for WWE, and they will pay. I think they will pay up to double the market value for WWE. If they were if the market value of WWE currently sits at approximately 6.2 billion, I think they'll quite happily go to 12 billion. They've already got a multi-billion-pound contract with them. I think they'll go to around 12 billion to own it. And I think Vince has been planning this since he's been off. I think he's been off. I think he's been in contact with the Prince, and he's been trying to find a way to get back in control of WWE. And the other argument about that would be, well, the shareholders have to agree on that sale. And ultimately, the shareholder is Vince McMahon. He owns 80% of the company, and he's the majority shareholder. And if he makes a decision to sell it, the other shareholders get a load of money. He gets a boatload of money, and he can carry on doing what he loves best.
I just want to interject because it was actually, it's not all doom and gloom. Andy from Russian Rock, who is our special guest, who you've seen do a SmackDown. Andy was saying, because he's a Newcastle fan, and he was saying that actually it hasn't, it hasn't had a negative effect on the club. It's more the moral and ethical issues that are around this. So it's not, and I know in the comments people are talking about the Saudi Arabia stuff, particularly Dan. It's not, it may not change the product. We may not have. We've talked about, Sami Zayn's not going to lose his job, but this is a moral and ethical thing. And if WWE care about the wider community, the WWE community and stuff that they actively have, and they actively send out, and myself and Andy have seen that firsthand. If they care about the community, then my argument is, as tempting and as much as Vince must want that deal to go through, because it's private and it's never, he's not going to cost him anything. He's not going to be vetted by anybody if it goes to the Saudis. There has to be a moral and ethical, because it's the wider community. How is it going to look? On a global...
You're talking about an ethical company where you've got a guy who's just come back in charge, who's got several sexual allegations against him. You're talking about them being this company that cares about the fans. They got rid of Bray Wyatt, who all the fans were backing up. I think that Newcastle, Andy, was it also Man City, I believe, is owned by the Saudi Arabia company?
No, Man City's owned by Abu Dhabi, so they're kind of like rival sort of Gulf states. I would, obviously, I appreciate what you've said there, actually is very kind of logical. But the one thing I would kind of rewind on is, you've got to remember, this isn't actually Saudi Arabia as a country owning them. This is a public investment fund. You have to remember, from a business perspective, if you were to, and one of the things I would just kind of point out is, if they were to go double the valuation, you've got to think that's not an investment that makes any kind of sense. They have to have a lot of money, but if you listen to every kind of statement they've ever made, and especially, I'm bursting it around the Newcastle side of things, is they had the opportunity to buy 30% of, I think it was Tottenham, 30% of Man United for about 300 million, whereas they could own Newcastle United as a club for its entirety rather than a percentage where they wouldn't get to talk about it. They will only make investments in what they will see a return in. Now, if they were to go double the evaluation, that doesn't make sense from a business or like financial perspective. That was the only thing I would take issue with. They could throw money around all they want. And I also just don't think they own anything outright. I think you have to bear that in mind, as they will only ever look to invest because they also will look to then flip things as well. So who would they flip it to if they've spent $12 billion on a company because no one could afford it? There's no investment there.
All very, very good points, but they're also paying multi-billion pounds for 2 events at the moment. So they potentially could see that as an investment. They're already spending a lot of money on WWE at the minute. And let's say they don't go double, let's say they're spending 2 billion. I don't know the exact figures. I don't think anyone does know the exact figures, but we know that it's a multi-billion pound deal. Let's say they up it by 6 billion. They're still getting that for free that there was paying for. So they get a return on that investment, and they've shown that they have interest in WWE as a product because they've already shown that by making that original deal, and they see the value in spending the billions that they're doing already for the press that they're getting, which is why I believe that they would go above and beyond for the company.
One thing,
a massive thank you to, sorry mate, I just want to say a massive thank you to Tom Talks Rubbish, who's sent us a super chat. Thank you so much, man. You make
consistently does as well. Consistently does.
We really appreciate it.
Thank you, mate.
Thank you so much, man.
Sorry, I thought that gap in your soliloquy was the end. Monologue, yes. Soliloquies an aside, isn't it? Yeah, correct. Now, the last reports we heard before everything shut down earlier was that the Saudi investment fund isn't the running favourite behind the scenes, which is an important point. Now, that might change tomorrow or whenever people wake up in the United States. But at close of play, they weren't the running favourite, which means somebody else is. Again, my money is on NBC or Disney, but I can't poke a hole in anything that you've said. It's all, I don't want it to be, mate, but it's all true.
It all makes sense. Yeah, it all makes sense. But that's what we're here to debate. And like I say, it was great having Andy here to give us that viewpoint around Newcastle. And again, because from a business standpoint, I think we did say that early on. From a business standpoint, I can totally see why they've done this. And equally, from a Vince standpoint, I can totally see why he's gonna, he's trying to get this through, because again, all of his legal problems go away if they, well, not all, not in terms of the eyes of the public, but from a business standpoint, if they go private, then they can't be investigated as much, as far as I understand. But we are here, this is why we're not doing this on Rush on Rock or Silent Sphere or WrestleSphere. We are here to debate. We are here to not have fun, because this is quite deep stuff, but to discuss and to share opinions, honest opinions on the sports or sports entertainment or theatre that we love in wrestling. So, I mean, let's go around again. I just want to make a comment that the poll has said that Disney and NBC lead 33% each. So you guys obviously saying Disney and NBC as well.
Can I point out another problem with Disney, which had given another property that they own? Dan says about, if Disney buy it, Vince is gone. Do you think Vince will go? No, I don't think Vince will go. And if Disney buy it, Vince will go. And the example that I would give of that is look at the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise, which has been made famous by Johnny Depp in what should have been an Oscar-winning first performance. And Disney won't touch him now because of the investigation which happened. You can
apparently
put a lot
he's back in. Sorry, mate. Apparently he's back in.
He might be, but that was after. During the time of a trial, Disney was said no, he's not in it.
Yeah,
and that was used as part of the trial. Yeah. So I think there's some interesting comparisons there in terms of Johnny Depp's trial and running with Disney, and Disney saying we are not touching Johnny Depp. We don't want to get involved in this, to Vince McMahon in a similar sense.
Disney have expressed, because there's a few people on our list who have expressed an interest, and there are people who haven't as of yet. So NBC, Disney, the Saudi Fund, Netflix, and the Khans. And so basically the 6 on our list have all expressed an interest, which would suggest they, at least on some level, are willing to look past the dodgy Vince stuff.
But is that an interest with Vince being out of the company? And if that's
exactly.
Is Vince going to agree to be?
Are we underestimating Vince though? Is it like, because let's say Vince gets rid of his 80%?
I think we are.
Yeah, because let's imagine he gets rid of his 80% shares, right? Like, is Vince really? Here's what we don't know. I know what we think, but what we don't know for certain that Vince is back just because he wants to gain control again. He might purely be back for that 80% share. He sat around thinking, I'm sat on 7 billion. I want my 7 billion or whatever it is. He might just be here for the money and not the control. He might get his money, cash out, goodbye in the sun. Now, again, he might not because he's Vince and he says he's going to die in the chair, pal. But I don't know. I think he's going to struggle. And the minute someone else buys it, no matter who it is, even if it's the Saudis, there's no guarantee they're going to let him back in and do what he wants. No guarantee at all, especially if he starts running the program into the dirt. So I actually think this whole thing with Vince is temporary, and even if that doesn't make it temporary, mortality will. So,
but if Vince is coming for a sale, knowing that he's got these sexual allegations, which let's say put him out of the talks with Disney, and his primary concern for coming back was to enhance the sale. How does that work with that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a good question because we can't argue. As much as we might want to, we can't argue that Vince being back and being in charge of this from a business point of view is a good idea and makes sense. Doesn't mean we want him back anywhere near the company in charge of creative or anything like that. But if they are doing the transition and doing a sale, it actually does make sense to have the 80% shareholder there. Doesn't mean you got to like him. And with them allegations hanging over him, I think Vince is on borrowed time no matter what.
But he could be there without being the chairman.
Agreed.
He was already there.
Agreed.
Hang on, Andy, did you put your hand up there? I saw.
Go on.
Yeah, just very politely, just kind of like raising hand. I was taking it easy. The thing as well, you got to remember, and it was a question I wanted to ask, and I'll kind of get around to that question. Is that's a lot of money for someone who's in their late 70s to kind of take? And I think I'd like to ask after this is, what do you think he's wanting that kind of money for at that age? Because there has to be a plan, because you would not be just taking that amount of money and going off in the sun, because I don't think he's the kind of guy who would go and blow it all in one go or anything like that. I think he's got a plan for what he wants that money for. But I also think you've got to look at it from the point of view that like personally, I think legally, I think he's not actually allowed to kind of stay on unless it was part of a new agreement. But anyone who thought that when Vince McMahon was stepped down, whether voluntarily or otherwise, if anyone thought that would be the end of him, it's his business. He owns 81% of it. He was always going to come at least back to sell it. Now, people can get scared about him being back on creative. We don't know. We won't know until it actually happens. But right now, he is there to facilitate a sale of, first of all, the TV rights, then a sale, because that is how it was worded in their official corporate statement. He's actually there to do the TV rights first and foremost. They'll probably bundle it into a sale. My point of view on the question I asked is, I think Vince wants the money. I think he wants to cash out, and he wants to live his big fantasy, which is to own an NFL team. I think he wants the money to buy an NFL team, and that's why he's doing it now, because he's not got that long left really in the grand scheme of things, and this is probably his last big shot. So I would say that's why he's wanting out.
That's a very interesting point, Andy, and thank you for bringing that to us. And interesting you mentioned there about the creative. Apparently there has been a meeting today before SmackDown. What I read is that Triple H has reinstated that point, driving that point home, that Vince is there to make a deal. He will not be investing in creative. But that remains to be seen. Obviously, we will be covering WWE. Yeah, well, I mean, he said it last week, and obviously people are still afraid of it. We're all still little bit afraid of it. So we'll have to see. But yeah, I mean, we'll obviously keep tabs. We have our weekly streams right here on the Give Me a Hull Yeah podcast covering Raw and SmackDown. So we'll try and keep you up to date on whether we see any Vince-led creative on those shows. But yeah, I mean, having you all here is wonderful, and thank you all for joining this debate tonight. Obviously, great to have different viewpoints, like say Andy from Newcastle, obviously talking about your experience, from that football side of things, and obviously the Saudis getting involved there, because but then also the sports washing, that was a term I hadn't heard till you brought it up to me last night, Anthony. And the idea that they're trying to sports wash. So we ignore all of the ethical, moral atrocities, and equally, Sam, your knowledge on NBC and Peacock and bringing that to my attention, because again, obviously they have the long-standing relationship with WWE, which to me indicates that it would be a better and easier deal to take through than arguably any of those going forward. Does anybody have anything to add that they would like to add on their viewpoints on this as we kind of close things down?
One final thing. Sorry.
No, go on.
Mine's really short. I was going to say one final point about what Vince might want. I love Andy's idea that he wants to do the XFL or whatever. But I think there's one really important point when it comes to Vince McMahon, and Dan in the comments hit the nail on the head, and that's legacy. He just wants to be the guy who got that amount of money. He wants that in the history books. I did that. Don't mean he wants to spend it. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. It's about legacy. Look what I did. That's what it's about. And I think that's a bigger motivator than even money for him. But anyway, sorry, Andy, you were saying.
I was echoing your point. I agree with what Andy said. It's very interesting to think about what he wants that to be. And what is the status of the XFL at the minute? Is that still
The Rock
owns
it?
it.
The Rock owns it, but is anything actually happening with it?
Yeah, they've announced the teams, and and I think they're about to go into the player camp. So I believe it's starting once the NFL finishes. I think that's the way it works.
Okay, so he could potentially buy that back or something like
or
that.
Invest,
Who knows? Man?
Yeah,
or invest within it. Yeah, very interesting points there, Andy. Very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you guys for the engagement. Obviously, there is a poll up now. Take the next few minutes to get your votes in. Currently, NBC and Disney are neck and neck. I think Disney might be edging it right now in the poll. But I'm going to do what we like to do at the end of these streams, and that's go around and get people's thoughts and final thoughts and anything they'd like to plug and anything they'd like to promote. So, obviously, Anthony has some tiers to promote and some things to promote from the marketing perspective of the channel. But let's start with our special guest, Andy from Rush on Rock. I put you over all the time, and I will continue to do so. It's a pleasure to have you here, mate. But what would you like to promote to the community as we finish off, and anything else you'd like to add on this matter?
I mean, obviously, any kind of eyes on rushonrock.com. There's lots of rock and wrestling content on there. So I know there's a lot of people who kind of have that crossover. You can follow me on Twitter, which is @Sport19. You'll also see on Rush on Rock in the next few days, I've put together a 10 superstars to watch from WWE in 2023. Let's face it, that could get blown out of the water when it gets sold next week and everyone quits. So I'll make sure that goes up quite quickly. What I would just like to end on from my point of view is we're all wrestling fans. Please, my plea would be don't sweat all this business stuff. Just enjoy the product as much as you possibly can. All this stuff is going to happen no matter what we all want or what we all think. But the one thing I hope will continue is that we can all just enjoy the wrestling while it's going on, or sports entertainment, whatever you want to call it. Because right now, we're all eating. It's good. Like, let's just watch AEW, WWE, doesn't matter. Rumble's coming up, road to WrestleMania. Just enjoy it all. Just crack on.
Yeah, well, Dan is not a wrestling fan, but he's a wrestling booker, and we're happy to have you here, Dan. Thank you for your viewpoints as ever. Sam, do you have anything you'd like to promote and plug while we are finishing up? And then your final thoughts on this too.
Yeah, I wonder what I could want to plug. WrestleSphere. Yeah. Obviously, guys, you know about this by now if you're here. So WrestleSphere is launching this month. Please follow us on Twitter if you're watching this video and you like what us guys all do. It's mostly a sound sphere spin-off, but all about wrestling, because there's so much wrestling content on Soundsphere. We need to find a home for it, and that's what we're going to do. And obviously, you'll still see us on Hull Yet as well, and we will do what we can to support each other. My final thoughts are now. I very much hope it goes with NBC. I think that's a nice ethical and logical decision. But again, who knows what Vince is thinking? Who knows what the money side of things is? And I echo what Andy said. Let's enjoy it while things are good, because right now things are good in AEW and WWE. They're not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but things are looking okay. Things are looking good. Let's just hope it doesn't get completely blown out the water by anything that happens. Let's keep the faith, like we are doing with Bray Wyatt.
Yes, keep the faith, absolutely. And before Anthony gives a plug for what he needs to give a plug for, and is plugging me to give a plug for all the time, I do want to call up a comment from Dan and see if he can answer it quick enough. He says that he effing hates wrestling, but he sadly has to do it to make a living. Is there anything that would save it for you, Dan? Is there anything that would save it for you? Is it us that save it? Because you're here a lot, and it's lovely to have you, but do we save wrestling for you? I'm only kidding, of course.
Are we the only thing keeping you going?
Yeah,
mate?
we're the only thing keeping you going, Dan. Is that why you're here? But tell me if you can, if you've got the time, tell me why you. Tell me, is there anything that could save it possibly? And I'm going to give the second. I will have the last word because I will sign us out. But Anthony, anything you would like to plug and promote before we finish?
Yeah, sure. Speaking of plugs, let's talk about butt plugs at onlynuts.com. You can view twitching asshole photos of myself and Dom.
YouTube, he didn't say that.
Apparently, Mandy Rose made a shit ton of it, so let's do it, Dom.
Well, yes, we'll be something. Yeah, we'll be making a shit ton.
And also, give me a whole yeah, we rock, man. And it's been great having all your discussions. Sorry, these videos, like, we're all trying to get our sort of views in and points in and keep the conversation going. And you guys have had some wonderful stuff in chat, and I will go back and read everything. Thank you all so much for that. And speaking of thank you to the fans of the channel, let's talk about why
Come on, mate. Come on.
Oh, there they are. Oh, you've put these Disney things there.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's talk about our Hulomaniacs. We've got a membership scheme. You can absolutely join and you can see benefits that you can get. And we've had several Hulomaniacs in chat this evening. If you want to look at joining the Hulomaniacs here, we've got Eve, Right Girls of Wrestling, Dan supporting the channel, Dex supporting the channel, the building bricks of the Gimme a Hull. Yeah, if you want to be a hardcore Hulomaniac, you absolutely can. Blood and guts down for you. Yeah, let's do it. That was shit. We haven't got anyone at the minute. That's looking a bit blank. Whoever wants to do it, let's do it. And then we've got our champion tier as well. And of course, the wonderful Sassy, who we all love and we all send our prayers and best wishes for the best health for Sassy, is obviously in the champion tier. So thank you all members so much for making this possible, man. Thank you.
So Sassy's the real champ, not Dan.
She is, man.
Or
do you know when people view like my AEW streams, they don't give a shit about me. It's all about Sassy, man.
I agree.
Understandable.
That's an interesting, deep point to end on. Wrestling is a great story of people. It's based on manipulation, and Dan is a fan of business, which is why he still is involved in wrestling in some form. What's the end of that sentence, Dan? I have to know. The butt plugs, yeah.
Manipulation.
Butt manipulation and butt plugs. That's a story, isn't it? That's a story. The same reason I like True Crime. Well, thank you, Dan, for that viewpoint. Thank you for your viewpoints to the stream. Thank you all for your viewpoints for the stream. We are coming almost straight back to you. I think we have 45 minutes off, and then we are going to be competing. Myself and Sam are going to be going head to head. I will be covering SmackDown, and Sam will be covering Hard to Kill at exactly the same time on the channel. So please go and hang out with Sam because he needs it more than I do.
John with the confident words, brother.
Right, okay. I said this before to him in private, right? And I said, so this is the War of the Roses done again. So you've been listening to these white roses for years and years and years, but we all know it's the red rose who won the war. Come and join the red rose. He's here and he's got thorns.
And being sure to leave a dislike on the video that you're not watching. Thank you.
Yeah, no, please don't do that. We don't want to hurt the channel.
There you go, man. There you go. Watch me get absolutely
Just
bounced out.
watch
And
me.
I hope Hard to Kill does great numbers because Impact deserves the attention. And obviously, we love SmackDown. We love Bray, and let's hope for a great SmackDown as well. Thank you guys for your support. Support us both. Have us open in new windows, and then have only
Just listen to me.
Have OnlyAns.com open another window and see mine and Anthony's twitching bum holes. Dislikes actually help. Apparently, what? I've never really. Is that a thing? There was a thing.
It's engagement, mate. Engagement. All engagement.
Better to be notorious than ignored,
isn't it? Watch time and engagement.
Yeah, better to be notorious than ignored. Right. Well, okay, guys. Thank you so much for your time, guys. Thank you for everything in the comments. We will be back in a little while with some more stuff. Cheers for watching, and we'll do the jazz hands. Andy, you remember this bit, right? It's real weird. We do the jazz hands and the whole, you know it, right? Yeah, you got it right. Cool. Get them ready. I'm gonna get us a video sorted before.
Oh my God! Can you just do it already? I hate this. I hate this outro.
Shush, please. Right.
Shush.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. See you later. Oh yeah, jazz hands. Oh yeah, Anthony.
This is the hardcore legend, Mick Foley. Well, hello and welcome to Give Me a Oh Yeah. I hope everyone there, right there in Yorkshire, is having a nice day. Bang, bang. Have a nice day. Yeah.
Look at that beard. He's like